Hello, and welcome back to Stu's Booze Reviews. First off, I'd like to apologize for the lack of content recently. Due to working in retail, my schedule has been shifting around a lot because we're short-staffed. It's been really hard for me to find time during the day to record videos, and it's also been hard finding the energy to record videos. I apologize. I'm working on it. We'll get there. A couple more weeks. I promise. Second off, you may notice a couple differences. I'm not in my normal chair. I'm wearing a headset. What gives? Well, for reasons I'm not going to go into, I'm taking a break from alcohol for a little bit, till after New Year's, so a couple more weeks. It's not serious, just something I wanted to try. I regret it. It sucks. We're almost there. A couple more weeks. I can do this. So with that being said, we're going to be starting a new segment that I was planning on doing in the future anyway. So, welcome to Stu's Booze News. This is where we're going to be discussing some different topics within the wide world of wine and spirits. And with Christmas and New Year's coming up, it is most definitely time to talk about wine. Now, I'm going to be throwing a lot of information at you guys in this video. It's going to be a bit of a longer one. So feel free to write down anything that you'd like to know for your own references. Or as always, you can skip back in the video and rewatch it, if there's anything that you thought you missed or thought you'd like to see. So let's get started. Now, there are always two questions I ask whenever a customer comes in looking for recommendations. Would you like white or red? And would you like sweet or dry? These two are the most important questions. Now, there are 5 main types of red, and there are 4 main types of white wine. The main types of red wine are Pinot Noir, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Zinfandel, and Syrah/Shiraz. So those two are basically the same. It just depends on the region they come from, depends on what they call it. I don't know. I wish they could just pick one. There's also red blends, which are a blend of any of those wines. And there are also region-specific reds, such as Malbec, and some certain French wines that I'll get into later on. Now, on a scale from sweet to dry, it tends to go from Zinfandel, Malbec, Merlot, Syrah Shiraz, Pinot Noir, and finally, Cabernet is the driest. Now, this, of course, isn't always the case. A person's personal taste and preference on flavors can somewhat shift those around a little bit, but generally, that's the scale that we tend to go for. Now, looking at a taste aspect, Zinfandel tends to be light, fruity, a little bit on the sweeter side. Malbec tends to be a little bit more soft and juicy, and recently its popularity has just skyrocketed. I'm selling a lot more Malbecs than I've ever sold forever. It's crazy. Merlot is kind of that good middle ground red. It's rich, yet still kind of light, still kind of fruity, but again, it is drier. Your Syrah and Shiraz are more of that savory, little bit more spicy, kind of a little bit of that black pepper type flavor to it. Pinot Noir is very similar to Zin, fruitier, lighter, but it's drier. And then when it comes to Cabernet, they tend to be more bold, upfront, kind of more of that jam flavor to it. Now then, for whites, we have our 4. We have Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Grigio, and Riesling. Again, there's blends, regional distinctions, and distinctions between varietals, which we'll get into here shortly. Now, sweetest to driest is Riesling, which is considered a semi-dry, Chardonnay, Pinot Grigio, and Sauvignon Blanc. For taste distinctions, Rieslings are obviously sweet, crisp, not quite like Moscato, which we'll get into here shortly, but very similar lines. Chardonnay tends to be medium-bodied, with notes of fruit, but it can also be oaky and buttery or creamy, depending on how they've aged it. That one's got the most variation in it, is the best way to put it. Pinot Grigio tend to be softer and usually dry and crisp. And Sauv Blancs are usually less crisp than Pinot Grigio, but they're not as bold as Chardonnay. They're more of a muted flavor. Now, some other types of wine, there are rosés, moscatos, and of course, champagnes, which all fall under their own categories. Now, as many of you know, Moscato is sweet and can be red, white, pink, whatever other colors they want to add to it. It can be sparkling or non-sparkling, which means lightly bubbly or not bubbly at all. Champagne can be sweet or dry. Now, there's a few different varieties as well. So champagne is typically reserved for the variety that comes from France. There's also Prosecco, which is basically Italian champagne, and there's Cava, which is Spanish or Latin champagne, for all intents and purposes. There's really not a lot of difference between them, just where they come from depends on how they name them. Now, from sweetest to driest, and this is where it gets all kinds of confusing, and I wish they would fix the naming convention for this, but they never will because why would they? So, the sweetest ones that you can get are demi-sec. You don't usually see a lot of those in the stores, probably because they're not very popular, and most people tend to go for a Moscato when they're thinking of a dry bubble or for a sweet bubbly type of wine. Next up is so then from demi-sec it goes dry, brut, and extra brut. Now, why they don't just do dry as the driest doesn't make any sort of sense to me, but whatever. There's also spumante, which is probably one of the more popular varieties of it, but it's actually a full sparkling Moscato, not champagne. It's usually in the same section, but I'm going to guess just because a lot of the same brands make spumante as well as dry and extra dry that they just include it with that, and most people tend to think of it as a champagne. Rosé wine is kind of in the same way. Most rosés from Europe tend to be on the dry side, and most rosés from America tend to be on the sweeter side. Whew. I know that's a lot to digest. We're about halfway done. We're getting there. Bear with me. Now, certain regions have certain aspects to their wine, or there are certain varieties that are uniquely theirs. For instance, Latin wines, those from South America or Spanish regions, actually have their own unique types. So Malbec, I spoke about it earlier. That's a specifically Latin red wine. There's also Vino Verde, which is specifically a Latin white wine. There's also specific wine, or I shouldn't say specific wines. There's also New Zealand and Australian wines, as well as Italian, French, and of course, German wines. Now, New Zealand wines are really unique in how they do some of their wines. For instance, their Sauvignon Blancs. American Sauvignon Blancs and Sauvignon Blancs from other regions usually are aged in oak barrels. Now, New Zealand Sauv Blancs are aged in steel casks. So this helps them keep more of their kind of crisp, sharp grape flavors throughout the process, and it's something I really like. So when you're aging it in oak, you get kind of more of that, oaky, smooth, buttery type flavor. I'm not a huge fan of that. New Zealand, with it being a steel cask, to me it basically tastes like I crushed up a bunch of green grapes and just drank it. It's awesome. I love it. The other regions, so Italy, France, and Germany, are unique in that they've been making wine from grapevines that are a lot older than those that are in America. So they tend to part a lot better flavor, I guess is the best way to put it. A lot of times you'll see on the bottles old vine. Basically means that, these vines have been around for a very, very long time and are well established, flavorful grapes, essentially. Now we're done. That's it. That's the basic wine varieties. It was a lot to go through. Now, why did I tell all of you this? The short answer is because I can. The longer answer is that should you be looking for ideas for gifts for, Christmas or, that bottle for family dinner or celebration, you'll have some ideas of maybe things you want to try. When it comes to food pairings, honestly, a lot of foods will say, or I shouldn't say foods, a lot of websites or wine connoisseurs will say, well, you have to have, this specific wine with this specific food. Honestly, to me, that doesn't matter. Drink what you like, drink what you want. Why would you drink why would you drink a variety of wine that you don't like just because you're supposed to drink it with that food? That's just wasting money, especially if, you try it and you don't like it. You've just wasted a bunch of money on a bottle of wine that you're never going to drink again. Now, I do understand that for big dinners and events, that there are people who want to stick to traditions. In that case, I would usually suggest a Riesling or a Sauvignon Blanc. They're lighter since they're white wines, and they'll pair better since their crisper notes will kind of help cut through that heavy dinner. You know, I'm full of turkey. I need something light. Boom. A light white wine really will help with that. My personal opinion, again, New Zealand Sauv Blancs, my baby, or a German Riesling or Gewürztraminer. Now, there's usually a third question that I ask my customers, and that's how much do you want to spend? This may not be very important to some people, but to others, it is. For me, I usually try to suggest wines that are in that $15 to $25 range. They're usually the best quality per price point. Anything cheaper, you begin to lose your flavor and your quality in the wine, and anything higher, you tend to just be paying for prestige points. Now, if you want to spend more and impress someone, I won't stop you, but I think that there tend to be bottles around the $25 range that are better than those that are in the $50 range. Again, you're paying for a name sometimes, not quality wine. Lastly, I do get questions about cooking wines. Now, for cooking wine, I usually suggest as cheap as you can get it, unless you're also planning on drinking it. For reds, I would usually suggest a Pinot Noir, and for whites, I would usually suggest a Sauvignon Blanc. Both have more of that kind of smooth, fruity, not quite as oaky flavor that sits a lot better with cooking. And that's it. We're done. We've made it, people. There is Stu's Booze News Wine 101. Now, if there was anything that you think that I forgot or anything else you'd like me to discuss, please feel free to leave a comment below. I can always do a follow-up video or, just answer in the comments section. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, maybe even hit that bell, keep up to date with my latest videos. I've got a couple more coming out before I get back into the reviews. Keep an eye out for them. They're going to be helpful. The next video will be all about whiskey. Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for watching, guys. Cheers.